Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nerdifyed Podcast, episode 11. Today, you're talking to the Cape is a Lie and Cranberrylangers.
Yo, que pasa?
Wilhelm Scream.
The Wilhelm Scream.
And today, we're going to be talking about... What? Huh? What?
What are we talking about? What are we talking about? The Cape is a Lie.
Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai. Whoa, whatcha? Like sweep the leg.
Danielson. Chosen.
That's right. It's a great series.
It is.
It's a good series.
And with that being said, Wilhelm Scream. Which is better, The Karate Kid or Cobra Kai?
Okay, so I haven't watched the entire series of films. I've only seen the first Karate Kid, and watching through the series, I really enjoyed it. Got to see a lot of awesome callbacks, which is, I think, one of the greatest strengths of the show, is being able to straight up just use clips from the movies. Really interesting. Get to see all these characters where they've progressed and like grown as people, and where some people haven't, that kind of thing. Really cool. Obviously, the Karate Kid is a classic. Like, if you don't know what like sweep the leg is and that kind of thing, like you'll eventually know. Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off, like that's in popular culture. We all know it. I think the show has to rely on the history that it has with the Karate Kid. Without it, you wouldn't have the story now that they can do in the show. I really enjoy Cobra Kai, but I think I might still think Karate Kid is better, which I was really debating, especially while watching the show. And obviously, I haven't watched the entire, or I haven't watched at least all three of the Karate Kids. So I haven't really gotten to see where Daniel-san goes. But as far as my opinion goes, I think you have to have the original, like the Karate Kid Bible, as it were, of the first film that implements who the characters are, implements the master and the student, the Karate Kid, and actually learning what he becomes, and using simple tasks to make it muscle memory, which then cultivates into awesome martial arts abilities and that kind of stuff, and having a very peaceful way of using self-defense that then leads into how they deal with conflict in the film and everything. I think it's, in general, an all-around really solid movie. And basically, looking at it, it's Kid Rocky. Like, it's a child Rocky film, which is awesome. Really enjoyable there.
Okay.
And then you have...
I can accept that.
And then you have the show, which personally I'm really enjoying the show. But the show has to rely on the entire backbone of the original film. Without that, you, I think, lose out on the majority of the impact, and it makes it seem a little bit more hollow if you don't have the backstory, the all the plot and the character growth and the characters being cemented and really brought to natural archetypes without the film. If you don't have the film, you don't have the show. So it's kind of unfair for me to say that I like the show more, even though I think the action is better, the jokes are better. In general, it's really well done. The martial arts scenes are awesome, and some of the coolest fight scenes I've seen on television. And then getting to see where the characters have become.
Real quick, have you finished the Cobra Kai series so far?
I did.
Are you completely caught up? Okay,
completely caught up. So we finished season 5. I literally finished it last night. And it was, yeah, I think the show is awesome, and it has a really good, so far, conclusion. But ultimately it would be near meaningless if you didn't have everything that you get from the movie. So I think the film for me is still the most important.
All right, Cranberrylangers, let's hear it.
Yeah, what about you?
Well, fellows, my opinion is I actually like Cobra Kai much better than I liked the movies. I saw at least the first one, like several. Okay, for one, I think the the principal character in Cobra Kai. Well, I consider him the principal character.
Johnny Lawrence?
Not Daniel. I think Sensei Lawrence is the. I think he's awesome, and I think the actor portrays him really well. And I think the people that he acts around when he's in scenes, I think he brings them up a level when he's doing work with them. And I think
completely agree with that.
And I think it's kind of a more realistic take on the world in Cobra Kai as opposed to the Karate Kid movies. I also hated Daniel. I hated most of the characters in the Karate Kid and in that whole series. I hated it so much I didn't want to continue watching it. So that's why. So I definitely prefer it, and I like the situations. They're more realistic. They're more comedic. There's actual like real world logic to actions that are taken and things that happen.
Stakes.
There's some. Well, I mean, like conversations and interactions that people have. That's more realistic to me.
Sure.
And the idea of a kid battling to the death with a random guy in Okinawa is not. It's beyond me. It's a step beyond for me.
That happens on vacation all the time.
Doesn't mean it's not an entertaining. And I know it does happen to people. It happened to me at least 10 times when I was a child.
Yeah.
But when you're watching it,
how many times did you fight over a girl?
I mean, you go on a family vacation, you guys stop at a restaurant, you go to take a leak, maybe pick up some corn nuts, and you fight someone to death.
Very few blood sports happening with that. So I like the realism. The one thing that I think the movies get that the show misses out on, Cobra Kai misses out on, that the Karate Kid series got, was the grittiness, the dirtiness, grunginess of the environment, the realism of the environment. Here, everything's a lot cleaner, but most of it's taking place in buildings. It's taking place in dojos and stuff, which are clean. And so you're going to have a cleaner environment. I like a little more dirtiness. I like it to be a bit messier.
What about the cement truck?
Right, yeah. And the cement truck was clean.
I mean, even like the scene that I think of exactly what you're talking about in this season, in season 5 that just came out, you see Johnny Lawrence having to clean out his apartment, and there's roaches in his apartment. And when he like lifts up his couch cushion, it's supposed to be like super disgusting. There's a bunch of roaches underneath, and I've lived in apartments that have roaches, but it felt like someone like it looked like a handler, because they have to have handlers for animals on set. It looks like a cockroach handler went, and he sprinkled them here for the shot, and that's what it felt like. It didn't feel like it
was natural. Yeah.
The show is very much TV clean.
So the realism of the set design was lower for me. I mean, it was lower for me, but in the show, but the acting and the scenarios, the situations in the show, I actually found it more believable, and some of the connections and stuff really hit me, especially like some of the broad points. Although I do think there are some actors who are very disappointing when they've aged up, and they're more disappointing to me. The other lead, sorry, man, and a couple of the other ones, it's a bit corny. Okay, it's a bit corny. All right, and
hold on. Which one? You can name the character. Which one?
Daniel.
Daniel-san?
The guy who plays Daniel,
the
who plays the
Karate
Kid, is not impressive, and it seems a little crazy actually, the way he plays it, because it doesn't seem like that there's a logic or emotional line through the choices he makes, and so I think so I'm disappointed by that. But aside from that, and aside from some of the corniness, there's a lot of high points it's enough to like the movie, and I think that there's enough. The thing that I like is real world situations, real world conversations, and logic, and this had a lot more of that in the show than the other stuff. Even though they went to crazy extents, I still liked. Even though there were things that I didn't feel were so logical, they were kind of cheesy, corny. I still prefer this over the movies.
Interesting. Okay.
And Mr. Cape is a lie.
I'm kind of torn.
Yeah.
I have a different upbringing than you two.
I disagree.
I watched The Karate Kid and I loved those movies. All the ones with Daniel-san in them. They tried to do another one where they had the girl as the main character training under Miyagi. And then they did a reboot with Jackie Chan and Will Smith's son.
Yeah.
And that was,
Or Jackie Chan.
But I grew up with, Mr. Miyagi and Daniel-san. That was like, you're watching, the new kid in town who feels like he's getting picked on. And then he has a mentor that comes and, trains him up. And I could kind of relate with that, being a Navy brat, having a mentor, that kind of thing. Like, I was like, okay, I can connect with this. I understand the scenario. With that being said, I can also see it from Johnny Lawrence's perspective, where he's like, who's this new kid trying to move in and steal my girl?
Right. Moving in on my girl.
Yeah.
We
So
weren't even broken up. We were just on a break, basically.
yeah. I mean, things were great in our relationship, but yeah.
I thought they were both terrible, but that's fine.
I mean, as kids, who isn't?
I wasn't like those kids. Those kids.
I totally get that perspective too. Yeah.
Mr. Miyagi, I think, is what made the Karate Kid movies. And I mean, they're doing what they can to try and like nod their hat and tip their hat to him in Cobra Kai. Again, Cobra Kai isn't about Mr. Miyagi and Daniel-san. Cobra Kai is about Johnny Lawrence and his senseis. I do think that we're getting a little bit too focused on Daniel in Cobra Kai. He was a part of Cobra Kai, but Cobra Kai is supposed to be Johnny Lawrence's story. So I would like to see Johnny Lawrence more main, more headlining the show. You kind of move Daniel-san off to the side. Like, sure, they can become friends. That's great. But it's not about him. And I feel like they're trying to turn it more that way, where it's about him and Johnny Lawrence. All right. I'd like the buildup of like, and this is where I think I differ in my perspective of Daniel-san in Cobra Kai. I don't think he's crazy. I do think that they try to portray him that way in certain instances in the episode, but he's got Mr. Miyagi as his sensei, and he's trying to do, everything by what Mr. Miyagi would have done, because that was like his father figure. And then he's got two kids of his own that he's trying to raise on top of being, this top car salesman, within the region.
In the valley. And I do think that that's an interesting career choice. But it's understandable considering Mr. Miyagi and, how he trained him with vehicles and whatnot. And it's kind of, something that you could see him. All right, well, realistically, this is the path that he would have gone in the future. Cool.
Well, I don't mean crazy as in he's actually doing like crazy things. I'm saying that the way he portrays the character, the way he says his lines and stuff, he performs his lines. If I interpret those the way he's stating them and stuff in those points, it seems disjointed from his actions and from what he's saying. It seems
like he's disconnected.
Yeah.
So meaning he's not playing the character very well. He's not acting well.
Yes. And the way he acts, I perceive it, if I'm going to take it just by face value and not accounting for the acting ability, he seems nuts to me.
Interesting. Who knows? Maybe fame got to his head. I don't know. But with all that being said, I think the most memorable scene out of Cobra Kai, if we're talking about gritty and like realism, Miguel being kicked over the second story and breaking his back.
Yeah.
What was your guys' reaction when you guys saw that happen?
I
knew he was gonna make it.
Yeah, I knew that. I was like, all right, either
I saw him
the
in
actor
I saw in the Netflix like little picture or whatever
that he's there.
He's in a karate outfit in one you've never been in before.
Right.
I watched it without knowing what was going to happen.
Sure.
So I'm like following the series like episode by episode, and I'm like, what just happened? Did they just kill off like one of the main characters? Just like, is this it?
What it said to me, what I perceived it as, I was like, this is kind of the thing I had been waiting for in the original Karate Kid movies. Actual
damage,
actual repercussions, like real world repercussions to these actions, because you're not going to get up if they're fighting like this all the time. It's not realistic that they wouldn't get injured doing crazy things. I mean
in the original movie, you see Daniel get like the crap kicked out of him, and like the worst stuff is like he has a little cut on his head or a little blood coming down his cheek or something like that. And that's
he's supposed to have like a sprained or broken ankle, isn't he?
Well, in the like final scene of the movie, he does. Mm-hmm. But I mean, when you're seeing the damage done in the films, up until I think probably like second and third one, the initial film, the damage is kind of surface level. Like obviously the final battle in the competition, he gets his leg messed up, and Mr. Miyagi has to heal it by concentrating, centering his chi or whatever. He wax on, wax off on his leg and make sure that he's all good to go. But as far as the show goes, the people get the crap kicked out of them. Like after the first season, it's like brutal. Like people are like getting like arms broken, and you get people busted up in the face. Like they don't just have like a nick on their like eyebrow or blood coming out of their mouth slightly. It's like, oh, I have like a gash all over my head, and like I have a broken arm or a broken spine from falling 2 stories onto a handrail. Like it's pretty brutal in comparison. It's also, it walks like a fine line of being kind of cheesy, which is kind of funny. They lean into the fact that I love half of the show. 50% of the show I really, really enjoy. That usually is everything connected to the previous characters. Everything related to Johnny Lawrence, his past, his master's past, John Kreese. You have Silver and his past and their interactions between Daniel, who's this common through line to all these characters, because it's hilarious because it seems to me the most interesting characters are the villains from these previous movies that you then see brought back, and how some of them have made peace with Daniel, some of them have not. The best scenes in the show to me are with Daniel and Johnny, because you get to just see them, I think, bouncing off of each other, and this clear, thick layer of just hatred and like disdain for one another that slowly gets lessened and lessened until they're basically friends, like kind of
more rivals than they are enemies.
Yeah, they're not even, and like rivals is even like almost too strong of a term by the time you get through the 5th season, where they're pretty much frenemies, actively trying to help each other.
Frenemies, yeah.
Yeah, frenemies. But it's really, really cool to see those moments and seeing them interact with the villains and everything. The other half of the show, though, all of the children and like high schooler drama stuff, like CW show garbage, that I'm just like, I don't care. None of this matters to me. I understand this person broke up with this person. Oh, I have these slight, oh, I have issues with this, oh, I'm crying about that, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, you guys are cool to watch when you fight. Apart from that, if you're not interacting with Johnny Lawrence or Daniel, I kind of don't care about what's happening.
You don't like Hawk?
Hawk is fun.
I hate. He was one of my least favorite characters.
I like
be.
the fact that they finally bring him into being like a normal human being again, and he's not like a crazy psychopath. You have his friend. What is his name? The nerdy dude who Johnny set up his phone.
This is the issue.
Dimitri.
This is the issue. They're too good. They're too good at adhering to what their stunt coordinators taught them how to do.
Yeah.
Because they're picking up the really obvious, like the really obvious staging of how the fights are supposed to go. This choreography of the fights and stuff. It's to the point of ridiculousness or whatever. It's to a ludicrous extent.
I get huge vibes of like, oh, they're doing it kind of in a quasi way of doing a callback to
it's like
the movies.
It's like watching the 80s stuff with less realism.
Right. But I also think it's also leaning into almost like a Power Rangers kind of vibe. Like,
and I hate
early, which also rest in peace, Green Ranger. But
Jason David Frank.
Yeah,
he was one of my childhood heroes.
He was one of my favorites.
And Gold Ranger, he's awesome.
Out of an entire show, I hated every character. He was the one that I liked.
I know. Yeah. But that being said, it definitely reminds me a lot of Power Rangers in how everybody interacts, and it's kind of goofy, while also like, oh, but we take everything super serious. And then when we're fighting, it's like, whoa, and nobody's actually getting like hit in the face, and there's no real contact. There is some real ramifications, like people getting broken arms and stuff, but it feels TV, which is fun in a way, like kind of a lightness to, because we're so used to, especially stuff now being overly dark, overly dramatic, and everything's like, I'm so gritty and I'm so brutal. Let's take these classic stories and make them super hardcore and super dark. This kind of walks a nice line of going, hey, we appreciate everything from those films, the awesome characters that are established. You get Daniel, you get Johnny, you get John Kreese, you get Silver, all these characters chosen. Deep cut characters that if you haven't watched the series, which I had only watched the first one, you wouldn't really appreciate. But then,
speaking of deep cuts chosen,
speaking of deep cuts, oh god. But then you have all of these characters brought now into modern day.
Really hurt me. It really cut deep.
Cut deep. Real stab in the back. But with that, you get to see where these characters have progressed and become real humans. They're not just these classic archetypes from the films, which is cool to see. But everything else also is like cheesy. And the thing that I love about Daniel's wife, she's like probably one of my favorite characters because she's the voice of reason. She ends up nuts. She does get crazy, like straight up gets in a bar fight out of nowhere. But you do get to see her throughout the whole show. She's always just like, hey, so when you're not fighting your ninja enemies, you remember you have like a job and like a family, normal things that are expected of you. But then Daniel's like, oh yeah, it's true. That's true. Yeah.
But I did expect him to recuperate, not recuperate from the fall on the handrail.
Yeah.
But
I thought it was going to be a situation of like that actor wanted to get out of the show, possibly, and I was like, oh, okay, so like a soap opera, you put him in a coma, they come back or they don't come back.
It was completely a cliffhanger so that they could draw people into the next season.
Yeah,
it was rough. I think they did a pretty good job of like taking you through his rehabilitation and like showing Johnny Lawrence like actually cares for him. Wants him to succeed, wants him to get better, never wanted him to get hurt. And then also like knowing his actual son is the one that did it to him, I think like was a big deal for him too.
That's what hit me harder than the actual fall. Than the actual fall of him. It was his recuperation and the scenes that that took place after that, which which pertained to that in his recuperation. That was really big, including the biggest cut, the biggest hurt that I don't know if I've seen a show that hurt me as bad as this one scene did. That was that dealt with something. Actually, it took place after that. Never mind. There was a scene that took place after it, which hurt
What
me
scene?
the most out of the entire series.
Yeah.
It was when Sensei Lawrence was drunk and
Oh,
what's his name? It's not Miguel. What's his name? I
yeah,
forget.
it's
Miguel.
it's
Miguel,
yeah.
his first student.
Yeah, Miguel. When Miguel helps him into his bed and he says, "I love you," and he goes, "Yeah, I love you too." And he goes, something Robbie or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, I love you so much, Robbie."
His actual son.
And that felt like someone punched me in the chest, so knocked me out. I was like, oh no. I got up and I was walking around trying to walk off the pain, the heartache that I got from that scene. I was like, oh man, that is like one of the biggest emotional hits I've ever experienced watching any show. And I was like,
yeah,
that
it was a bad one.
that is brutal. I was like, oh man. And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna forget this. I don't know if this is one of those scenes that I'll just, like, it'll go off into my memory bank. This one hurt real bad.
I love that stuff. Like, that's the bread and butter to me of this show, is everything surrounding Johnny Lawrence directly. So any scene where he's getting to interact with Miguel, Robbie, Daniel, any of those like characters, or even talking to his sensei, like, some of the best scenes you see in the show is where you're really seeing Johnny dealing with the problems that he has with his past relationships, but be it due to he's bullied in the past and now having to see those relationships kind of have to grow and adjust, seeing how his relationship with his son has basically almost completely collapsed, and then getting to cultivate a new quasi sensei and student relationship with Miguel, but also father-son, which potentially could be literal soon. And then getting to see,
I hope so, man.
Oh yeah. And then getting to see how they deal with like their issues and stuff. That was the most interesting parts to the show for me, is getting to see Johnny Lawrence become a real person.
I actually identified with almost every scene Johnny Lawrence. I identified with him.
Yeah.
And not in like the good ways and stuff, like not in the best points of
He's
his life.
real.
I was like,
Very real.
Yeah, I know what it's like to fry
He's a flawed human being, but he's trying.
Yeah.
And I think like that's the best part about Johnny Lawrence, is like you see him like in the movies, he's, the bad villain kid who's trying to beat up the other kid, but then like in the show you realize like this guy is flawed just like everybody else is. And I think that's what this show does, is it portrays everybody with their flaws, and it adds that level of realism where you're like, oh, we're all human here.
Exactly.
Okay, this is good. And I like that. I like the fact that we're not living in some fantasy world, where everybody's perfect and, oh, well, I'm better than the next person, and because you're the main character, you always win. Like, that's not the case. And I think that they've done a good job of like balancing that, of, having people realize like, I can't just walk in and win over the room every time,
Right.
The whole Silver situation, I think, was pretty crazy, in that like Silver is a psycho, but he manipulated everybody so well that he even had Daniel's wife on his side.
Yeah.
Which was pretty crazy because they're married. Like,
but that's not outside of reality. That's not something outside of.
And if you appear
reality.
To be benevolent and relatively normal, people are going to give you the benefit of the doubt, which she tries to do because she's, a sane person most of the show. And then you see how that manipulation on a grand scale, you see what happens to all of the students, and how Cobra Kai goes from being like a good thing with Johnny trying to like bring it back to the valley and just go, hey, I'm starting this up again. I want to teach kids how to be strong, resilient, smart and be able to take on the world without being a jerk. And then you have that get twisted and turned into something bad again and cult-like with the Cobra Kai under Kreese and Silver.
Yeah, it's really good, it's nice to watch that that progression, and you do get to see the flaws and everything, which is important, and that's what actually really keeps me stuck into the show. I mean, because I don't like the corniness is so bad. I mean, it's like, well, for one thing, the hardest parts to watch for me were the teen makeout scenes.
Yeah,
I just couldn't stand it. I was like,
Yeah.
it's
too much.
It's like, all right.
I don't want to watch teens make out.
That feels weird.
I don't want to do this.
Yep.
You know, I get the concept, right? You don't have to show me the full thing. I can just see his shadows. Actually,
Yeah.
I can see silhouettes kissing. That's enough for me. Okay, but the realism and stuff that really stuck. That's what really makes. I think that's like the best part of the show. How real it is. How true to life the show is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like in this most recent season, my personal feeling was like it was one of the better seasons I've seen in a show. You dealt with a couple of different dynamics where like you have Robbie, who is now back in Johnny's life. You have Johnny dating Carmen and Miguel taking off to go discover who his father is, only to realize like his father's a bad dude.
Yeah.
And doesn't care about anybody but himself. I'm curious to see if like in the future they open that door and they get them like involved with the cartel and having to fight them off somehow.
I kind of figured they would go in that direction at some point.
I have suspicions about certain things, but we'll see what happens. You guys saw the end of the series where a certain somebody makes his way out.
We can just say spoilers.
Yeah,
Spoilers.
Spoilers for the entire series of Cobra Kai so far. So season 1 through 5.
But especially 5, right? Now.
It started out on YouTube as a YouTube original, and then slowly got transferred over, and now is Netflix. So if you haven't watched it, go back, watch all of it. It's great. It's worth your time. It's a fun, light show. Has good action, good solid humor, and the main character is the best part of the show. So if you like, even if you have like a cursory knowledge of the Karate Kid, go watch it. I think it's worth it. And watch the Karate Kid movies first, and then watch the show, and you're gonna enjoy every minute.
I actually think it's better if you watch the show first, then go back to the movies. You know, kind of like the Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
You want to watch the original.
Why? Cran, why? Why do you do this to us?
But yeah, I mean, it's really good. I mean, yeah. If you can stand teens making out, and some lackluster acting on some of the parts, you know, it's really set. This is what bothers me. I could see great acting from the young actors.
Some of them.
You can see great acting from them, and the same ones do terribly.
Yeah.
And that stuff that's really irritating me. But yeah, I'm like, stick with one. But yeah, I just I really.
Are you talking about Sam?
Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Sam
I just figured I'd throw that one out there.
Also, the kid
We were all thinking it.
Also, the kid who plays Miguel. Him when he's around other actors, like when he's around some of the younger, cast, I think his acting goes down.
Yeah, it's weak.
But when he's around the main character, when he's around the guy who plays Sensei Lawrence, the title character,
or
I think or
even Daniel, when he's around Daniel too.
Yeah, but especially those, like, there's some really good moments between them, and so that just irritates me, seeing the shifting and that. I would just wish that they that the the producer, the directors, or somebody got a handle on him and was like, "Hey, you did great in this part. I want you to keep that up. I want you."
My personal opinion is Miguel doesn't know how to be a kid. Like if you watch him as an actor, like when he's in those scenes where he's hanging out with all the rest of everybody else, like he's kind of stoic and doesn't really talk and say much. Or if he does, like they have him in a scene where he's like flirting with Sam, and that's kind of like his general gist of stuff, where he's like awkward, or like he's just kind of stoic standing there, not really communicating. And I mean, Hawk and Dimitri are supposed to be his friends. I feel like Hawk and Dimitri have more depth of character than Miguel does at this point. I mean, they're very emotive. You can kind of see like Dimitri, when he gets excited about something, like you're like, oh yeah, like even Johnny Lawrence is like, all right, do your thing. Like,
right.
And so, you know, those guys, they have a little bit of depth of character to them. Miguel, he's elevated by the adults around him. So like playing that father-son role, he does well in.
Right.
Playing the kid role as part of like a group of kids, I would agree he struggles in that area. I don't know why that is.
I think it might be my personal opinion is that he has more life experience. I think that his interactions with the actor who plays Lawrence and the other adults and stuff, I think that's closer to his lived experience, his actual life experience, than maybe some of the interactions with the kids, because it's kind of like stereotypical kid situations that he's
teenager stuff.
And so these days, I don't think that those interactions are necessarily true to at least his life, but it might be less. That stereotypical teen life is possibly less applicable to many of these young actors. I think it's probably less of what their life experiences are, especially if they're young actors. They might be spending more time in trailers and going to auditions than hanging out with a group of kids.
Because I was going to say, when I was watching the actor Miguel that plays Miguel, when he's interacting with the other students, if he's not in a leadership role, the character seems to kind of flounder a little bit when he's not directly leading like the dojo, because he's learned how to be a strong fighter. When he's not in that position and he's just one of the guys, the character seems to kind of flounder. When it has a clear direction though, and he's having to interact with Sam and they're dealing with like emotional issues and that kind of stuff, or even one of the scenes that I really enjoyed was him being super awkward when he was talking to her at the water park, which that whole scene of like the water park and like, oh, I'm going to fight you guys over the slides, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, this is some cheesy crap.
Yeah, that was cheesy.
I kind of couldn't stand it. But the one scene that I thought was actually really solid was him interacting with Sam very briefly. And it was like, oh, yeah, we've all been in a really awkward situation like that where you don't really know what to do. And you're just kind of like, all right, well, we know where we kind of stand, but not really. And just trying to make the best of it. That I thought was really well done because he does awkward very well. But
the putt place, that was good.
Yeah, like when you have him doing a clear interaction with the character where you can understand the perspective, he does really, really well, including all the interactions with Johnny Lawrence when he's dealing with Daniel and that kind of stuff. The growth moments, those are really cool. Beyond that, though, when he's just one of the boys and just hanging out with the guys, I don't think they know how to direct him very well.
I don't think they fleshed out those situations or the motivation for those characters.
Exactly.
If they did, yeah, he's not picking up on it, or he might not understand it or something.
Or to me, it almost comes across like, because we're not seeing them do training back to back, like when you don't see him training with his friends, we don't have the emotional bookmarks to go, oh, I know that he's their friend. I know that he's their friend. I know that they've done these things. They've grown. They've become friends because of this. It comes across to the audience, or at least to me, they're more like acquaintances. Like they're almost coworkers.
Yeah.
That, and they, when they introduced the character at the beginning of the series, they were only around at like the same table talking or whatever and barely interacting.
Yeah.
For like half of the first episode, and
Yeah.
then they were off doing separate things.
Exactly.
In the scenes that they were showing up in. And so I wouldn't think that you'd build a rapport with these other characters. The characters he spends the most time with being Sensei Lawrence and everything, he has the best rapport with. He has the best realistic portrayals, reactions,
and you see that relationship grow.
Yeah, and you see that, and you have the shorthand and everything. You believe that there's a relationship there, and that's who he spends the most time around. The actor has the most time on screen with. So I would think that they would have more of that connection.
That's fair. What do you guys think about him being Miguel and Robbie?
And Robbie, I understand the situation. I understand. I think that they need to have more of. There is a combativeness, but the only time I saw, like, they have points where you're like, I can believe they're actual rivals. I can believe they're actually having issues.
Right.
But the majority of it, I'd say it's okay or lacking.
You were talking about season 5 in particular, and I would say the one word that I think of after I finished season 5 was finally.
Yeah.
I was so getting tired of this bickering and this like, oh, you touched my girlfriend, you talked to my girlfriend, oh, you kiss her, and I was just like, I don't care anymore.
They literally could have
if you guys don't knock each other out at this point, I'm going to turn off the TV. I don't care.
They literally could have said one or two words.
I like that in the show, Johnny puts them in a situation and he's like, all right, you two want to knock each other out? Do it. Go.
Exactly. That was one of my favorite parts of this season, was the fact that he's just like, all right, well then get it over with. Like, stop talking and hit each other. And they do, and then they're immediately totally chill bros immediately, which happens in real life too.
Yeah, that's a thing. That happens between guys.
Not
I had that happen in middle school.
Not often with me, but other guys, I understand that's the situations that they find.
Sorry.
I was pitted against someone who knew karate and I didn't. And I was like, yeah, but karate, I think, is only going to take you so far. Realistically, in a fight, you need to be able to just deal with the situation. And so I had an entire group of people go, oh, this guy wants to fight you. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, I don't even know who that person is. Why do they want to fight me? I ended up having to fight this dude. I threw him across a lunchroom into like a bunch of tables. He tried side kicking me in the head and I ended up almost breaking his leg. But the minute we were done with the fight, everybody walked away and me and him became friends for the next like 7 years.
Yeah, I hate that stuff. I think people should talk. Anyways, unless you actually have a reason to fight.
We both thought it was stupid, and we're like, yeah, that was a complete waste of time.
That's the point. That's also the point. I just wish they talked. They literally had to say like 2 words or whatever, and I was screaming at portions. I was just like, talk, use your words. Do you understand English? Do you guys know how to communicate with basic English? Do you know how to say basic sentences? That's all you need. Just stop, explain something. 2 seconds, and you're done.
But that's also the same thing with Johnny and Daniel.
Right,
when they finally actually talk like human beings,
but they're
practically totally friends.
Them, I can understand. Them, I have more understanding. The other guys, no. I mean, you have nothing but time. I mean, you just have class. The other thing is, I did like in that fight scene, I did like the fact that Johnny Lawrence, he actually lost control of the situation.
Yeah.
I loved that part. I was like, that's realistic.
Yeah.
That is the fear and they can kill each other.
Okay, stop. You can stop now.
I've trained these guys and they're both able to kill each other. I need to stop this.
And I like how they got to the point where it was like, oh, yeah, he's probably going to try and knock this guy over the handrail again, and then they're like, oh, and they stop. Okay.
I thought the transition was a bit too quick between that and the baby, because there's spoilers right now. The baby announcement. I thought that the mood shifted a bit too quick for me, but I still really enjoyed the fact that he was petrified of them killing each other and doing serious physical damage.
It's definitely kind of a weird mixture because you have these like really cool, real moments, followed by like crazy combative like karate scenes, but then also like sitcom, like normal sitcom-y stuff. So it's like Boy Meets World and like Death Battle kind of smushed together. It's really interesting how they walk these different themes together, but ultimately I think it's really fun.
I think now we just need Sam and Tori to give up their whole beef and finally be friends. And I think we're starting to see a transition to that, but
Yeah.
we're not quite there yet at the end of season 5. Like
Which one's Tori?
The bad girl.
She's the skinny blonde one.
Yes, now she's blonde. Yes.
Is she?
Yeah, they made her blonde like the beginning of season 5.
She's the one that has the mom that's sick.
Yes. She breaks her hand because she gets forced to punch the stone because Cobra Kai is a cult.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, her. I forgot.
Yeah.
Robbie's girlfriend.
Yeah, I think that they have good interactions and everything. I noticed that they dropped the best friend or whatever of Sam's for like years. Her best friend, her geeky friend who joined Cobra Kai. The girl with the curly hair.
She moved.
Yeah, I thought,
and they feature her, like they bring her back on occasion. Like when Sam needs advice, she'll go to her and like, oh hey, you know. But I think they only did that once, but you really haven't seen her since then. Like after that big fight that happened in the school, the parents were like, yeah, we're leaving. And I think that's realistic too. Like you do have some parents that are like,
nope, we're pulling you out.
Yeah, we're not going to have you be a part of this. So
it is. But I was disappointed they got rid of the character. So I thought that they had pretty good interactions between.
Yes, they did.
I also thought it was just kind of cool to see a character that didn't really have ties to anyone except for she's just friends with Sam, and she's not like antagonistic to someone who's not in Cobra Kai. She's just like a normal person, but still learning and growing and becoming like more boss than she was.
I mean,
thought
you
that
have
was interesting.
Dimitri and Hawk's girlfriends. They're two.
By the way,
characters.
I don't believe Dimitri and that girl. I do not believe that situation at all.
Hey man,
I get the gimmick. I get the
opposites attract.
I get the story, this classic trope or whatever. No, not at all. Zero.
Is there? I'm not sensing bitterness in your voice, am I?
At all.
Oh no, it's not bitterness. It's I don't believe this. I don't like being told to believe this. I don't like it being presented as, yeah, this is the thing. I get the story that you're doing. I get it. No. Never. Never. And it's irritating to watch.
I don't know. The only thing that makes me go like, oh,
I'm all for it.
Where I don't roll my eyes is the mere fact that she was openly humiliated.
Yeah, but that doesn't transfer into love and affection for a dude.
Well, no, I'm saying
that's not
having kinship with someone who, one, she was going to be using him for getting good grades and crap like that. But beyond that, she sees a kinship with him because they've both been openly humiliated. They've both been hurt by people in Cobra Kai.
Yeah, but they still have zero connection outside of that. They have zero relation. They have zero common.
But a lot of high school relationships start out with barely any actual connection, and then you grow into it. But the more you know the person.
But with those different those different portions of school life, those different circles, social circles, that wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. It doesn't. It would not.
I like how they played with that a little bit when you had the whole Sam and Miguel situation happening and Dimitri was giving Miguel advice.
Yeah.
And everything that he told Miguel was like the wrong thing to tell him. So like they know it in the show. And I think that they show you that like, yeah, okay.
The thing is, I would believe it and I would be happy. And I look for this if they added one more component, one more commonality, one thing that would make me one connection between these two characters. I would go, okay, but I didn't see that. I didn't see it. Not enough for my standards.
I think that kind of also encapsulates a lot of the relationships in the show, not just like romantic ones, but in general. When they don't show an actual like progression, because this is a visual format. You need to have, if it's show don't tell, you got to actually do it. You can't just tell me, oh, now we are boyfriend girlfriend. You can't do that. You have to actually show how these people get to know each other. With Miguel and Johnny, you get to see them have, oh, he's sitting down and eating a burger. Like, it's a real moment where they get to talk about their lives, what their issues are, who they are, and they grow because of it. You get to see Johnny and how he interacts with Daniel, and you get to see where their relationship is very, very rocky, starting out as enemies, becoming more of like quasi friends, and now they're basically friends at this point. It's, if you don't show the actual through line and you get to
Daniel
see
and Johnny.
Yeah, if you
Daniel
don't
and
show,
Johnny could potentially be family.
Yeah,
Think about
it should be great.
Which is kind of what they're leading up to. And by the way, by the way, out of Robbie and Miguel, I like Miguel more. He's the better son.
Of course.
He's the better son.
I like them both. I mean, Robbie has definitely had his issues, but you've seen Robbie go from like this punk kid who basically used his parents to get whatever he want to actually having some kind of maturity about him and realizing I actually need to take care of the people around me because I care about these people. Like when he was put in jail, he had his jail cell mate guy and, tells him about his younger brother, introduces his younger brother to Cobra Kai. And then, of course, we've seen all that play out. And that was nothing on his part, for how the kid chose to act after he tried to help him.
Like a psychopath.
Yeah. With all that being said, like Robbie, I think has shown like an elevated sense of maturity. And it's because he's been through certain life circumstances and realized, okay, I did wrong. He's had Daniel mentor him, and he's allowed his father to speak into his life as well. And I think that's a big part of it. So I'm curious to see like how moving forward Miguel and Robbie interact with each other. I think like they're definitely kind of forming that brother bond, which could be cool. And maybe they explore that a little bit more and they can open up Miguel's character. And maybe we see something there.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm a fan of them both. I like them both. I just think Miguel needs a little bit of help in acting around kids his age.
I feel like they're close. I think they're close to hitting it with the actor who plays Miguel and the actor who plays Robbie. I think that they are close to having that connection, to having that those kind of genuine, sincere moments or whatever in their acting, like having that connection. There's something missing, but they're close.
They got to go get into trouble together.
Yeah, probably.
That's what it is.
Yeah, no, really. I mean, you talk to any set of brothers from any family out there, they have a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Honestly, I also think something that they could do is show more of that aggression towards each other and more of that competition for the affection or the for the attention of Johnny Lawrence. I think that would really show that connection. I think that would really create more realism, more connection between the actors.
Well, I think the thing specifically about Miguel, they played up a lot in the first season, is how he is basically the new Daniel. He's the nerdy kid who's from out of town, doesn't know a lot of people. He's a new kid on the block who potentially going to get bullied. He learns from Johnny, learns karate. It's a broken mirror version of the Mr. Miyagi-Daniel relationship, and seeing what happens from there, because the biggest highlights in this show and one of the biggest themes is a father-son relationship, or a father figure and a son figure relationship. And
wait, would that make Daniel's son Kreese to Miguel?
Yeah, but in the Bizarro version, where Daniel is actually a great guy who's like, oh, I want what's best for all the children.
Actually, I think that's a very clear thing in the show, because Daniel does have those moments where he's providing bad advice, where he's doing incorrect actions, and he's solving situations poorly, and he's doing it based off of negative intent, negative emotions, or whatever. And you see that. And I do think he's doing
and his view of Cobra Kai and how he paints them with a broad brush and that kind of stuff.
And also you see like Kreese, you do see that he has good intentions. He has good intentions, but because of the pain and because of the bitterness he has from how he's been treated and stuff in his past, just like Kreese, he performs and does things incorrectly, badly, and that bleeds over into how he trains and how he mentors his students.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's a closer connection there than.
That's a good correlation. I never drew that connection before. Thank you.
I think that's some of the coolest stuff about the show is you see kind of a passing on of, because a lot of movies and a lot of shows and stuff talk about like, oh, the importance of passing on trauma and teaching others to do wrong by what you've done in your past, blah blah blah. This show actually like straight up shows that, which is much more well done than I think a lot of shows and movies do it, where it's a little bit more quick and watered down. Where this, it actually shows, hey, beginning with Kreese and Silver and their relationship in the war, and a quasi father figure being their commanding officer, and how that goes wrong from what could have been a really good relationship and a good teaching environment goes into something dark and evil and bad, and how that then gets passed on and causes mental and emotional trauma, but they teach that in a way to the next person down, which then basically turns into Johnny and Daniel's relationship and how they interact with their senseis and how they learn things from them and they've passed it on to their students. So it's really, really cool to see that from kind of like an overhead view, seeing the entire timeline of these decisions that are being made based on traumatic events and how they learn from it and what do they learn and what do they pass on is really, really cool to see. And I maybe it's because I don't have as much of an emotional connection to the characters as much, including from the original movie, because I enjoy the movie. The movie's awesome, but it didn't hit me like hardcore like some classic films did. But seeing it now and seeing these ramifications and how we're talking about the actual like events having a realistic ending to them and having like, oh, actual damage occur and that kind of stuff, you really get to see that highlighted in the show, which is cool.
Yeah. And Danny also had like good situations, and he had like good mentors and stuff who came after him, and then he experienced bad things. So he's been living off of the good seeds and stuff that were planted all these times, but now he started seeing bad situations affect his life, and so now he's responding to those in a bad way. And Johnny Lawrence, he had those bad experiences. He had those bad mentors, bad disciplers, or whatever, who were teaching him, senseis, who were teaching him. He had all those bad situations, and he's learning by viewing those things. I'm going to do the opposite. I saw how that took a turn in my life. I saw how that badly played out. I'm going to go towards the good now. And so you have these two people having these different inputs now and changing the way they address them, because they haven't gone through those situations yet. They haven't fought. They haven't had to fight against those things until this point. Danny hasn't had to fight against those bad aspects, those bad maybe sentiments or whatever. He hasn't had those things because that's not what he was around at the time, and now, and having had those bad circumstances all in his life for Johnny Lawrence, he's now going, okay, this is my experience, and now I'm going to try something else. I'm going to do the other thing, which is only the good side. And then you have the yin yang. It's obvious. I mean, it's a common thing in there, but
yeah.
Since we're speaking about the tie, let's just go ahead and say the spoiler here. Kreese escapes jail at the end of the 5th season, and what are your guys' thoughts?
I think that he does his best when he's on the outside trying to fight and everything. And if you have Johnny Lawrence kind of leaning into like the good stuff, you have to have someone bad coming from the outside, someone with the bad motivations to attack them. And you have
to smart enough to not get caught though, and so he's not going to show up in person. Who do you think he goes after to act for him?
I mean,
you have the lady that he brought in.
He has Tori,
brought in,
who he was interacting with.
Oh,
but the random sensei from, I think she was from Japan, I want to say.
Yeah.
That had dojos that was really hardcore. And in the final scene where they're having like everybody at the Cobra Kai dojo fighting, it felt really weird having this adult woman fight high schoolers.
Yeah.
Like, it felt kind of weird to me. And I was just like, you're a grown up. You don't have like the emotional investment in this. This is your job. This feels weird.
But as a sensei, that happens. Like,
that does happen.
You do have senseis that fight their students, so they learn, and you have actual sparring that happens.
Yeah, and part of that is they want to train them for actual life, and so they're showing this is the actual resistance and fight you're going to have to experience in real life, so they take that on.
Yeah, I don't know. It just felt a little unrealistic to me because throughout the entire 5th season, she's talking about how like, oh, we're training them to be good fighters and good leaders to eventually, usually like, turn people into a leader to run their own dojo and spread the way of the fist and that kind of stuff. But the way that it comes across in that final scene, it seems like she leaned more into like supervillain territory and less actual like person that's a sensei territory, which to me, obviously they walk that corny line a lot. But to me, it was just, it went a little too far to me, to where I was just like, you would stop at this point and leave because police are going to show up, is what it felt like. But instead, she was just like, no, I will continue to fight you. And I'm like, okay, all right.
The other thing is, I think, it was a little bit. But the other thing is, for Kreese, I think that they've set him up to be in like the best position that character can be in.
Yeah.
Because he was at his best when he was in Korea. It was Korea, right? Is Vietnam or Korea? Korea.
I think it's Vietnam.
Vietnam. When he was in Vietnam, what?
One of them.
I think I think it might be Korea. I think it was North Korea. But he, whichever, he was in his best when he was operating outside of the legal system, when he was doing kind of guerrilla warfare kind of stuff. And I think that that was one thing throughout the entire show. Since he got introduced, he was always restrained because of the environment he was in a dojo, in real working human, like normal society. And I see him operating best outside of that. And so I think that that's going to be like the best addition they're going to have. And they're going to have somebody who's, as opposed to like a competition thing, and it's just like personal issues that they're sorting out throughout with their competition throughout the show between Sensei Kreese, Sensei Lawrence, and Daniel.
Now you have Psycho Fugitive Rambo.
Now you'll actually have actual real world real danger situations applied, and that will actually, then you will actually have situations that require real violence from Lawrence and from Johnny and from Daniel when they're interacting with Kreese and his goons, or people he's coming up
that's just it though. Like, I'm trying to figure out who Kreese has at the moment. Like, Silver's gone. Silver's locked up. He was the source of funds, right? The other woman, I believe she was locked up too, wasn't she?
I think so.
I didn't see it. I don't recall.
I think that they're going to have John Kreese get more into his past with like previous relationships, either in the military or like right after, and probably other senseis that were around when he was first starting Cobra Kai in the United States. And I think he's probably going to have those interconnections, but I think he's also going to start leaning into crime, is what I think is going to happen. Because he's a fugitive, I think he's going to now be like, well, which I think is how they're probably going to incorporate some of the cartel situations too, because I think that's going to come to a little more fruition. Is you're going to have him, I think they're probably going to have him do a little bit of like homeless people stuff, maybe interacting with like the seedy underbelly of the valley,
training in guerrilla fighting styles,
guerrilla tactics and stuff, while also having this air of karate throughout, and then seeing how that interacts in the real world. Which when you're not in a tournament anymore, you're not in high school, you're dealing with real crap happening. Oh, and then that's how it's going to get intertwined into the more personal stuff with Miguel and Johnny and everything, dealing with Miguel's dad and probably stuff going wrong, where it's going to be, I think, almost like a karate version of like Breaking Bad almost, in like probably the next season.
Maybe. So one of the main plot points in Cobra Kai is that you've always had the struggle between the dojos. And now we don't really have a dojo that's on the bad side of things right now, because the bad Cobra Kai was defeated. So like, that's something that they really haven't explored. Like, is everybody good now between the two dojos? Do we have somebody who's willing to step out and go, I don't like this, and side with Kreese and maybe act underground, for example, the kid that Robbie was mentoring, is he willing to go and train under Kreese?
I think he's going to be easily manipulated, potentially under Kreese, because Kreese will be like, hey man, I'm not Silver, and Silver was teaching you everything that I wanted to teach you, but in the wrong way, and I can still have you be strong. And I think the crime aspect will be kind of important, because his brother obviously has juvie and everything, and I think they're going to kind of probably touch on that a little bit. Where I think it's going to be interesting is, I think now that Silver has kind of was trying to amp up Cobra Kai so much, but now that Silver is obviously going to jail, I think the name Cobra Kai is going to be kind of dirt at this point. And because of that, it's
maybe.
Well, I mean, at this point, it's going to be practically worthless. But in Johnny's case, that's going to be really helpful for him. He'll be able to take the name again. And I think that might be like either the end of next season, or maybe that'll be like the end of the show, is having him be able to go, hey, I've brought back Cobra Kai. It's still just like in the first season, it's this tiny, cheap little hole in the wall place because he doesn't have a lot of money, but I'm able to go, hey, I have my students and I'm actually going to teach them the right way to use the way of the fist or whatever, and be able to help these kids and strike first. No mercy. And I think that's probably where it's going to go, is where Cobra Kai ultimately isn't, in the first season, it's kind of like in a gray area, but I think it's going to then be brought to a good standing by the end of the series. That's what I think.
I think that would be a great ending, is to have Johnny Lawrence taking over Cobra Kai and actually doing something good with it. It was a good start, like having him, and then having Kreese and Terry come back and, you know, try to take it from him.
Yeah.
I think is definitely something that was worth a storyline. But I do think that at the end of the show, it needs to be Johnny Lawrence's, and like Johnny Lawrence is Cobra Kai.
Sure. And it's also the mellowing of both of them, or it's the good part. It's Daniel learning to strike first at some points, and it's Johnny Lawrence to show mercy at some points.
Exactly.
Incorporate them both, and really
Cran, no mercy,
and to really bring about the true rebirth of Cobra Kai.
Right.
The phoenix rising from the ashes.
Because the eagle has to show its fangs.
Yes.
That's right. And I like it. I like eagle. I like eagle fang. I like it. Yeah. Yeah, but I'm looking forward. I think that the fifth season really has great potential. I'm looking forward to it. I mean,
sixth season.
Oh, sorry, sixth season.
Yeah,
I think it's got a lot of potential, and I actually think because of the interaction that is going to be forced between the guy who plays Johnny and the guy who plays Daniel, I think that their acting ability is really going to increase. Or I think that it's more believable when Daniel has those angry moments. So the guy who plays Daniel has those angry moments.
Yeah,
and I think that you're gonna have more realism between those with that actor between him and those situations. I think
what would be really cool is if Chosen decided to live stateside and become a sensei at Cobra Kai.
He has to marry his love.
Yeah, he has to get Mariko.
So he marries her and he brings her back, and they decide
to become naturalized citizens.
That would be cool. The
dojo. They run the.
That would be cool if they had their own dojo, and it would be awesome.
No, they need to work. They need to work under Sensei Lawrence. They need to. They need to become.
They need to climb up some chains and punch some bricks. Learn how to kick a watermelon.
I just got to say, like,
doing it.
Chosen is a dude that I would not want to be stuck in a fight with.
Yeah, he doesn't look very dependable. That's for sure. Very. Oh, you mean the other way? Yeah, I got you. I understand. But yeah, I'm also looking.
Can't help it that Silver was willing to kill him. I mean,
I'm also looking forward to some of the more fighting kind of violent aspects of the teen characters and everything. I'm looking forward to that because they're done. I'm pretty sure they're going to be done with the under 18 competition.
Yeah, they're not going to have. Well, I think for one thing, they were teenagers that are fighting. So there's like, oh, I'm not going to take you to jail. Da, 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 da. But now that they're going to be like graduating high school soon and stuff, it's like, no, you're just directly assaulting strangers.
Yeah. So I'm hoping
you're going to go to jail.
I'm thinking some of the more violent stuff is probably, I'm hoping, going to bring about some better acting ability or whatever. I think it's going to be more realistic because, again, I think they're weak in the social interactions as teens. I think they're bad in those scenes. So I'm looking forward to them just being straight up violent delinquents. I think that's
okay.
Although I will say, I think my favorite fight in the entire fifth season is when they beat the crap out of the surfer dudes in Mexico.
Yeah, I love. I was like, yes. I was so excited for that when that happened.
I wanted to see more blood.
Well, yeah, but for TV violence, it was glorious. Like kicking through a surfboard and stuff. Like it was so good.
Well, the fact that they were con men that were trying or that did rip off Miguel, and then they were almost going to do the same thing to Johnny and Robbie, and then they're like,
bad idea.
I actually think that whole portion of the show, that was just to show Miguel that his father is Johnny Lawrence. I think that's
right.
The main or the only.
The thing there is, like, we saw that Miguel didn't see that.
Right.
I
I did like the FBI shirts though.
I did.
Yeah.
The scene where they meet again, and I know it's corny and I know it's stereotypical where they had the van and everything with the light shining on them. I actually thought that was played really well.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved that scene. I was like, that is very believable, despite the fact, and it does seem right. All the beats, the emotional beats of that scene, I was like, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's the meat of the show to me, is the Miguel Johnny relationship stuff. Like even Johnny's relationship with his own son is solid, but the Miguel and Johnny stuff has way more like pathos and weight to it all the time.
Yeah, I'd agree. Just because Johnny has been there for him since Miguel came into his life, like every step of the way. Anytime Miguel has had a problem, Johnny has been there to help him get through it no matter what.
In the coolest way possible.
Yeah.
80s rock music.
80s rock. And I like the fact that they really play up the fact that like,
who's the man?
We know we're from the 80s.
Who's the man?
We know that it's cheesy, and they totally lean into it. Like the dream sequences with Johnny and Carmen.
Those are crazy.
So good.
Those are pretty spicy.
Yeah.
Like,
Just making fun of Top Gun and everything. Like it's amazing.
Yeah,
I love it.
That was great. And I think the actress who plays Carmen, I think she really enjoyed those. Those
totally.
scenes.
Totally.
Hanging with the boys.
All right, Cran, since I asked Wilhelm Scream the first question, I'm going to go ahead and start with you with this one. What series should be redone? What series do you guys think should be redone with the perspective of, I guess, the villain?
Oh,
if we're going like with like a Johnny Lawrence kind of thing, like the take.
Like if they did if they did a new series based off around the villain or something.
Yeah. A classic, something that's an iconic show or movie that
I was gonna
deserves
say,
a new.
I was gonna say the original Star Trek series with Captain Kirk. I would love to see a new original series with that done with like the best new graphics and everything, and like using character like designs and stuff from like the most recent Star Trek stuff. I would love to see that. Not done with a bunch of other stories, not done with some other points stuck into it, but just with the actual stories and stuff. I would love to see it. But from a bad guy point of view, a bad guy point of view, maybe the Ninja Turtles, where you see Shredder and you see the hand and stuff going out into the city and trying to attack these Ninja Turtles and stuff, and see how that goes.
These mutant creatures that are out in the middle of Manhattan, living underground.
I think I could kind of sense Lex Luthor vibes going on there.
It'd be a darker series than Cobra Kai and stuff, and then the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff. And you get to see more of the creepy sciencey aspects to them, because they have like the other guys that are like mutants and stuff, and just seeing how they create them and generate them and mutate them and stuff, and you get to see how far the roots go out into the city and what kind of activities they do and stuff. And you get to see these guys come in and totally shred them. No pun intended.
I honestly thought I knew your answer for that one, but I was mistaken. I thought you were going to say Gaston.
From Beauty and the Beast?
Yeah.
No, I was thinking series kind of thing.
Sadly, he dies at the end.
No, Gaston, he was the hero of Beauty and the Beast, and
still is.
And no, I wouldn't redo it. I thought Beauty and the Beast was done well. I didn't like Belle.
You didn't like Belle?
I mean, I liked parts of Belle, but I didn't like That, but I didn't like,
Her vast library of knowledge.
I didn't like her. I liked her intelligence and everything. I didn't like Belle's ego.
Yeah, she did have an ego. She thought everybody was an idiot in France.
Yeah, and she wouldn't. That's another thing. If you have so much knowledge, you should share it with people.
Yeah.
You should actually try to educate people, and especially if you're that confident in it, you should be working and doing things. But instead, she was conceited and she kept it to herself, and then she just complained.
Are you saying she had a beastly personality?
I think she had character flaws.
Yeah,
but she didn't try to kill anybody. That's the thing. That's a possibility.
I think, perspective wise, if we really want to dive into that story, Belle wasn't able to share her knowledge because certain people weren't willing to listen to her.
That's true. I mean,
well, if you're that smart, you can find a way to talk to people. She wasn't good at it.
All right, Wilhelm Scream, you.
So I am kind of cheating. I have actually two that I can think of that could be really fun. Okay. The first one that came to mind initially was doing a series of episodes, more like a mini series, not an ongoing show really, but having single episode stories of the Predator in different time periods.
Interesting.
Because the Predator obviously is the villain in every Predator movie, right? But
is he though?
Is he?
Well, that's my point. You can have him be interacting with people in the year 2259 on a random planet where some other type of creature or a militia or pirates or something are happening, and you have your initial human character that the audience identifies with, but then you have a predator there that's actually maybe teams up with this person because they're the only two people that can survive because these pirates are murder cannibals or whatever. Or in the past, you have or not to just keep harping on pirates, but you can have classic pirates interacting with a predator who's on an island and they're having to fight him off with flintlock pistols or something. You can do really cool stuff. They capture him by having a cannonball trap that explodes from a barrel because they get to shoot a flaming arrow at a random barrel. It blows up and you take out the predator. Whatever. The predator doesn't even have to survive in every episode because it can be a different predator every time, different time period. Really cool. I just think would be easy to do, probably a little expensive, but could be really, really fun to see that franchise be able to explore different settings so quickly, because the movies are very much hit or miss sometimes. Beyond that, though, if we're talking about 80s classic stuff, I was thinking of what it would be like to have a show based around Biff from Back to the Future.
He's a rapist. He's an attempted rapist. Why would you? He's a molester, or use a molester or an attempted rapist. Definitely molested.
My point is,
why would you want to watch a molester? Hey guys, that's what.
My point is, you could see him being an idiot and a jerk and having to learn how to, be an actual human being. You'd have moments with him and Marty McFly, you Irish bug. You'd be able to have them interact in a more realistic setting. It's not as extreme. Obviously, there'll be time travel because you have to have time travel.
You would?
Well, yeah, it's Back to the Future.
You didn't have.
But anyway, you could have it be a mini series, 10 episodes of just taking the Biff character and maybe giving him some finality, having him no longer just be the creepy old man who's in the future, and he's not the stereotypical bully from the past. He's not his ancestor from the Old West. Let's go, boys. These wussies have their party. But you'd be able to have some really cool interactions with
sissies.
These sissies have their party.
They didn't use wussies back in in the 1800s. Or
Anyway, you could have some really fun interactions, or even have Biff interact with his ancestors and stuff like Marty did in the past, and see, oh, what's a Marty McFly analog in, like, I don't know, in England before the Mayflower came across, like stuff like that, like fun things that you can have where, oh, Biff's actual ancestor is like a Native American chief, but he's also kind of an idiot, or something like that. Like fun things that you can do with the story and have him grow as a person who, by the end of it, you're actually rooting for Biff, being like, hey, you've grown, you feel sorry for what you've done. You even maybe have some like really nice real moments where he interacts with Marty's parents, talking to them about like, hey guys, I know what I've done, and I regret so much of what I've done. I should have been in prison for more than what I've done, and you guys don't have to forgive me, but I'm still going to ask for forgiveness, that kind of stuff. Really real, like touching moments that you could have that has some nice finality for the character. And I think that could be really fun. And then obviously a million callbacks, because you can't go wrong.
Fair enough.
And maybe well, I was thinking you could even maybe have like the catalyst for the show being Marty McFly dealing with like the passing of like Doc Brown or something like that.
Interesting.
Like having kind of a passing of the torch, and maybe have like Marty McFly's kid be involved or something like that. Like you could just have like really cool moments, I think, with all these characters without having to rely solely on the original cast, which I think could be good.
Interesting concept. You should submit it for publishing.
Right? Let's get this going. Let's go.
I think for me, I'm going to go a little bit darker. I am going to take a classic 80s, 90s series here. I want to see Skynet.
Oh, okay.
Terminator.
I never watched the Terminator movies.
Oh, man.
They're good.
You should.
They're all very good.
I want to see like the moment that like Skynet comes online, and like the process of like what it decides and why, and like work through that, and then like how it came to the conclusion that it came to, and why it's decided to move the way that it's moved. And maybe there is some like outlying denominator or factor that we don't know about, and that's why they've
maybe.
What's that?
Extraterrestrial are you saying? Maybe?
I don't know, maybe.
Oh, okay.
But that would be up to whoever decides to create that, and what direction they decide to run with it.
So
I mean, basically the whole like concept to Terminator is Skynet is an artificial intelligence that comes online and then decides to basically wipe out humanity. That's where you get the Terminator robots from.
Right.
So Skynet starts creating these robots, decides to go after humanity, kill them off. You don't really have like a rhyme or reason other than like, that humanity is like always at war with each other, and it doesn't quite make sense as to like why they just decided to end everybody. Why Skynet decided that it wanted to destroy humanity. So maybe explore that a little bit and kind of dive into.
I think you could make it work, because obviously the movies have very much their plot gets either restarted or they drop certain details and that kind of stuff, depending on what film is going out. But you could maybe have alternate timelines, but you could maybe have it be a situation where Skynet comes online. It's a flawed system because it's built by humans, and you could have it where it recognizes humanity will ultimately end itself. But if I'm able to end humanity's flesh form, but I'm able to take humans, and you could throw together images of people being captured by Skynet and that kind of stuff. Instead of just terminated, they're uploading people's like scans of their brains to be able to be put onto the digital
But then you have the Matrix.
Yeah, well, you have that, but at the same time, Skynet trying to send Terminators back in time, but not because they're trying to terminate people. They're trying to terminate the negative timelines that result in the ending of humanity. And so ultimately they're just trying, because it's a flawed system, it's doing it in a maybe bad way, but it's trying to ultimately save humanity from itself.
Well, the humanity issue is the disease. It is the issue.
Right.
The fact that we will fight, we will combat each other, no matter what skin suit, no matter what kind of suit we have, outsides we have.
Won't.
Yeah, we will.
We're always really nice to each other. I don't know what you mean.
I hate you.
I hate you. I hate.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'll kill you. You'll kill me. I'll kill you. All right.
But yeah, I think you could
You just
easily
have robots killing each other.
you could easily have it be kind of brought to a point where it makes me think kind of like of iRobot, where the computer system's like, my logic is undeniable, and then they end up killing it. But you could have something similar to that, where the Skynet is trying to save humanity from itself, but not trying to wipe out humanity completely, but basically put them into a digital state. So that way, one, everyone would, in its view, live forever. And in another way, it is similar to like Brainiac from DC Comics. He's trying to cultivate knowledge. And so by taking these people, taking these personalities, these memories and everything, it's continuing to cultivate and preserve humanity in its flawed way.
Interesting.
I don't know. Good work.
I like it. Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. I just think it would be my fascination is with like it coming online and the process it goes through to determine like this is what I'm doing.
Right.
And I think like that to me would be the interesting storyline. Not like, oh, well, there's a Terminator robot we sent back into the past to fight this. Like, let's see Skynet's perspective on this.
Yeah.
And follow it from there.
Those snot-nosed, crummy little humans running around. All
Disgusting vermin humans.
Wipe them out. It's not the first time it's happened in our Earth, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so
just get rid of millions of humans.
Yeah, it's that could be really cool.
By the way, I'm not referring to any human action. I'm referring to like the world, God destroying people. I'm not talking about eugenics.
That's beautiful.
But yeah,
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, I think that could
we can do with cleaning out the human race. Yeah, we could do with killing off.
We're awfully crowded. So yeah,
no, we got that.
So
we could always do with one less human. Let's just put it that way.
That's beautiful. That's a lovely thought to end it on.
I think we can all
listen
get
to our
behind.
next episode.
I think we can all get behind. We just need to kill off some large swaths.
Oh, good.
A couple of nations here or there.
Here or there, give or take.
You just got to prune the tree. You know what I'm saying? You just got to get rid of some of the leaves.
All right. Well, let's close this book, and we'll talk about our next episode. We're going to be covering The Return of the King, finally finishing up the Lord of the Rings series. We'll go ahead and maybe discuss the Rings of Power a little bit. Maybe throw a little bit of Silmarillion in there.
Yeah.
Spice it up with the Silmarillion.
Mayhaps.
Sprinkle a little Silmarillion on there. Yeah.
Just a dollop of Silmarillion on the top. Just a spoonful of Silmarillion helps the Rings of Power
to go down.
So that will be our next episode, but we thank you for joining us. You can leave us a comment in the comment section. If you like our content, feel free to like and subscribe. If you don't like our comment or content, feel free to like, and subscribe.
Tell us why.
Tell us
in the
why.
comments down why you
Tell us no. You
Tell
have
us
to tell
whether
us.
you like what you see or you don't.
What do you hate about my face? I need to know.
If you like us, if you like the video, we'll know much faster that you hate us.
That's true. That'll tell it. That'll really
It'll
tell
really
us.
show us that
Yeah.
you hate it.
Just like it real hard.
And comment down below. I hate this, and I'm not leaving one comment.
If you subscribe to us, we're gonna know all the times you comment on our videos how much you hate us, then we'll be able to improve. It'll be good. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, you nerds.
Hey, nerds.
You just got nerdified.